What letter today?
Dalid.
Dalid?
Reish Tez Zayin. Yes. Baruch Hashem, Yitzi, welcome back. It's so nice to have you. Okay, good evening, Rabbi Isai. Parshas Chukas. First of all, I want to give a big yashikayach to the Orlov Mishpacha, who's sponsoring tonight Zera Shimshon as a Orlov from Los Angeles. Yedidim of mine personally for over about 40 years. As a schus for those in Klal Yisrael who have not yet been blessed with Zera Shel Kayama, they should be blessed by the Eibishter Bekarev. Rabbi Shimshon Chaim ben Reb Nachman Mechol. For all those who don't yet have children, and for all the singles, boys and girls, Zom Zoicha Zayin, Bekarev Mamish, Tiskela Mitzvahs.
What? You want to move? You should.
Tonight's Zera Shimshon Shiur is letter Dalid, page Reish Tes Zayin. We're going to talk about the inyan of Kivrei Tzadikim Einam Mitamin. The death of a tzaddik and the caver of a tzaddik. What some people have said is that a tzaddik's caver is so kadosh.
So large. I mean, his body is whole.
Let's see. The Torah Kedosha says in this week's parsha, Zois HaTorah Adam Ki Yamus Ba'oil. The pasuk says Zois HaTorah Adam Ki Yamus Ba'oil. Again, I also want to thank Torah anytime for allowing this shiur and so many other shiurim that Yidden give all over the world to spread Torah to everyone. Yasher koyach. Oh, bevakasha, bruchim habayim. Give the man a Zera Shimshon, please. Zois HaTorah Adam ki yamus ba'oil. Adam ki yamus ba'oil. Asks the Zera Shimshon, Makshim, this is the Torah. The Adam ki yamus ba'oil l'chudei sagi. Just say, Adam ki yamus ba'oil, what's the extra knech? This is a question that everybody asks. It's actually mentioned in the Gemara. Rish Lakish says, Zois HaTorah, the way to learn Torah is Adam ki yamus ba'oil. We're going to talk about that, Be'ezus Hashem, in the Maharal Shiur, on Rish Lakish's opinion of how a person is kaina Torah. But the Zera Shimshon has his approach. That's what we're here for tonight, right now. V'ledidan Yuvan Shapir, he says, the Zera Shimshon, Alpi a Gemara in Ksubis. The Gemara in Ksubis says as follows: when Rabbi HaKadosh was nifter, says the Gemara, Batla Kedusha. Kedusha became batal. Taisvis over there, and that's what the Zera Shimshon is focusing on, and it's here in our Zera Shimshon, says, Kishemeis Rabbi Batla Kedusha, Kasva Taisvis B'Shem Rabbeinu Chaim Koyen, the Batla Kedusha, Ratzaloime Kedushas Kahuna Legamri. The Kedusha of the Koyen was batal, and mutter loyli hitame, that a kohen could be metame. Now this needs explanation. I want to read the Tosfos that's in it in its entirety. Tosfos says like this: Oisoi hayom shemeis Rabbi Batla Kedusha. Says Tosfos, Hayu kairin oisoi Rabbi Rabbeinu HaKadosh. Why was he called Rabbeinu HaKadosh? Gemara we just had in Avodah Zarah. He was called Rabbi HaKadosh because he never looked below. He never even was mistakel bebris milo sheloi. He was called Kuloi Kadosh. I think the Gemara also in Sanhedrin says there was Sham in Sanhedrin. Fragtigim frag Tosfos v'ho detanya b'shilei soita mishameis Rabbi Batla anova v'yira. Why doesn't it say Kedusha? Yesh lo kedusha bechlal. Kedusha is included. That's one pshat. And now Tosfos drops the bombshell. Rabbeinu Chaim Koyin, Hoya Omer. Rabbeinu Chaim HaKoyin said, Ilmalei Hayiti Kishenifter Rabbeinu Tam. If I was in the place where Rabbeinu Tam passed away, Hayisi Metameloi, I would have contaminated, as I state in Tosfos. Tosfos is Rabbeinu Chaim HaKohen. Rabbeinu Chaim HaKoyen.
Where's this one?
Tosfos is not embarrassed to cover up, and Tosfos quotes it. Hayiti mitameh. Mata omer meir.
No, who is it? L'chaim McCorn.
Who is one of the Baalei Tosfos? Yes. Ksubas Kuf Yud Kuf Gimel Amid Beis. A Tosfos in Ksubas. Kleinchig a little Tosfos. Why? The high botlo kedusha. The kamar hacha hainu kedushas kahuna. The kedusha of the kahuna was bottle. V'chein muchach midekamar oisay hayom. Mashma oisay hayom dafka v'suloi. This day and no other day. Ubehedjam b'yisham b'mesechtes brachas keshemesu. Shemesu mish b'perek mi shemesu de keshemesu Rabbi amru ein kehuna hayom. All kohanim are not to act like kohanim on this day. What a massive chiddush! Why? We're going to learn it. That's the sugya, Rabbi Yitzi. That's what we're going to learn tonight. That's what we're going to learn. Ve'ein nira l'Rebbe, and says Tosfos a rebuttal. Tosfos says the mechemeduma l'Rebbe the hosam mai betumas beis apras terabana betumah deraisa loy. Tosfos pushes back and says it's not a dinda, it's not the tumah deraisa, it's only mean tumah derabana. What's What's going on? What do you mean kishemeis Rebbe? Butla kahuna. What does it mean butla kahuna? So, and the kashas minei ubei. Rabbeinu Chaim says, if I would have been around when Rabbeinu Tam was nifter, I would have gone to his levai and I would have been metama. As telech achshav. So go. Telech l'ribnitz. Right? Go. So, ein tuma. What's going on? I've been living for 26 years across from Ribnitz. Never walked in once. You know why? I'm a kohen. Umal a kohen, but Beis HaKvaros.
What is
Yeah,
this?
kohen bas. Shvil kohanim. Zelo achleis. There's a reason why kohen are not supposed to go to Beis HaKvaros. Yeah, so to find that them.
What the shvila over there?
Yeah. Okay. But what's going on? What's the sugya? What's tutzachta? In Pshat, by the way, just the Vilna Gaon says that when is the only time a kohen's allowed to be metama? When? 7 kroivim, that's one. And how about not to a karev? Meis mitzvah, very good. The Vilna Gaon says the ptira of the nasi is like a meis mitzvah. That that for everybody has to go like a meis mitzvah. You have to be metama for everybody. That's what he says. Let's see what the Zera Shimshon says, and we'll learn a grace sugya. Zokter azay v'lochayra divrei Reb Chaim Koyin nimukam imam. He's absolutely right. He's correct. Lefi mashakosov hashach. The shach is, as I've quoted him many times, even last week when we talked about Parshas Kairach, we quoted the shach that Kairach wasn't given the opportunity to be nifter. He didn't have the schus to die. The Sivsei Koyin, one of the Talmidim of the Ari HaKadosh, not the shach of the Shulchan Aruch, but one of the Talmidim of the Ari HaKadosh writes the following. V'anegeh b'meis l'chol nefesh odam. He writes like this. A person who is nifter through the Malach HaMaves, his ptira through a Malach HaMaves contaminates. But misas tzadikim shemeisem al yedei neshika al pi Hashem their neshama is extracted from their body with the Eibishter's neshika. That's what you call in English a kiss of death, but from the Eibishter. If that's correct, if that's the way the person is nifter, ein ruach hatuma sholetes b'misosen. The ruach hatuma, the person who's passing away, is being mechuber, is connecting to the mikor hachayim. He's being connected to the mikor hachayim. Lefi sheshamru nishmason. They, the tzaddikim, were shomer their neshama. They protected it. V'loi niftechu achrei hayetzer hara. They didn't allow themselves to have a pitui, to be seduced, to follow their tzaddik, if they're really a tzaddik. And they didn't listen to their yetzer hara. If so, nisharu tahirais v'levanos. Kilu tahar v'lavan, they were always clean. K'may shenoivchai mepi Hashem. The way the Eibishter put the neshama inside of them, Elokai, neshama shenasato bi, ata varosa, ata yatzat, ata nefachto bi. You blew it into me. The way the neshama went in, with a breath from the Eibishter, that's the way the neshama comes out for a person who's so connected to the Eibishter in his lifetime that he doesn't let his Yetzer Hara get the best of him. On the contrary, he conquers his Yetzer Hara. Va'al kein yitziosam gam kein api Hashem. Oto Eibishter, who put in his neshama, bizman habriya, when he was first born, neshama shenasata bi, every time we have life, we have, what's the word neshama come from? Neshama is from the word neshima. Neshima means the breath. Right? The neshama v'atana fachtabi. Right? The Kadosh Baruch Hu made the neshima of Hashem, made the neshama. And if the guf is so connected to the neshama, not letting the Yetzer Hara take it away from its chibur to the neshama, kasher yachanu kein yisau. The way it goes in, that's the way it goes out. V'lezeh amru chazal tzadikim einam mitamim. Says the Shach, that's the pirush, that's the explanation that a tzaddik when he's nifter is not mitama. And that's what it means, biyoim shemeis Rabbi batla kohuna, which means to say, kimoy shebechayehem taharu nishmatan, just like when they're alive, their neshama is taira. Afal pi shahoisa beguf, and mitzad, the guf itself, the guf is not a tahardika place. The guf itself is not looking necessarily to be tar. It has to, like we say in Yiddish, it has to shtel zu to the neshama. It has to go along with the neshama. Aval, if it's like that, Adraba, if that's the way it's living together, so when it's nifrad, the guf has nothing to be embarrassed about. Because on the contrary, the guf was so loyal, the guf was so masur, so getrai to the neshama that it did everything that the neshama wanted. That's called the guf. So when the neshama, think about it. If we're saying that the misa of a tzaddik is called neshika, what a holy body he has to have if the Eibush is going to put his lips on that person. If that's what he's zeicha to, achrei kol mashu avar b'chayim, after everything, and he's still holding so tahar, so where's the tumah? Kach acha pridosam. A malach hamoves doesn't touch such a person. Aval mi shemeis hayidei malach hamoves, says the Zera Shimshon, but if a malach hamoves gets him, then the reason is because of the sins that he did. Then mitama kol hanega by machmas tumah shekibel mimenu. He's been tamei his whole life. This is just unfortunately a continuation of that type of lifetime. There's no kedusha v'tahara in that misa. Says the Zera, that's what it says. Therefore, v'tuma shivas yamim ad shiva idnin yachlufin until 7 days go by. What's the Moshe?
What does that mean?
What's that?
For yourself.
When a person right? While you're in the Baal, Moshe, don't worry. Zog sich nicht.
How was it kind of supposed to know or could know whether or not this person was the Neshika, this person was?
So let's get to it. Okay, for next skit, let's see inside. Let's see inside.
It's assumed.
Yasa toiv v'lo yechte. That's right. So says the Zera Shimshon. The Zera Shimshon Shtelz zu uses this Sifsei Kohen to explain Reb Chaim Kohen, which is that the reason, and that's really what the Sifsei Kohen says, the reason that Rabbeinu Chaim HaKohen says, if I would have been by the Ptira of Rabbeinu Tam was such a Kodesh V'Tahar, then there would have been no Tumah there. Avol asks this Mises Nashika. Says the Zera Shimshon, but I want to explain this very clearly. Avokad Ma'ayin Beis Shaper, if you look at it carefully, which sounds like he's saying there's no tumah at all. Frek the Zera Shimshon, that doesn't make sense. Of all the great people in the world, one of the greatest was Yosef HaTzadik. Yosef was responsible for the Midas HaYisod. Yosef was one responsible. The Gemara says, the Medrash brings down, Sholach lefonav ish le'eved nimkar Yosef. Yosef gadar atzmoi min ha'erva v'nigduru kol Yisrael al yodoi. Yosef HaTzadik sholach lefonav ish. We mentioned it many times. Yosef, when he was 17 years old, hormones to the shamayim, and afal pikein, he was in Mitzrayim, and this Mitzrisha woman was pursuing him, and he was Oymed bin Ezoyin. He was Oymed bin Ezoyin, and it wasn't just her. So many were after him. He was so handsome. And Yosef's koyach, Shteiten Chazal, as the first Jew and the only Jew for 12 years in Egypt, created a koyach within Klal Yisrael, that the DNA of Klal Yisrael was strong enough to withstand all of the taivas noshim of Mitzrayim. 210 years in Egypt, and not one incident of a Jewish man living with a shiksa, a goyisha, Mitzrisha woman. Zilch, zero. Achas hoiso pirsama akra. Shlomit bas Divi is the only one. Where did that energy come from? Yosef HaTzadik. Was there anybody who was on such a madrega? And Ri HaKadosh says, of the 310 worlds that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created, 207 Keminyan Or was Mesukan al Yidei Yosef in Mitzrayim. He was single-handedly responsible for Klal Yisrael's identity as a nation. Eila told us, Yaakov, Yosef, only because of Yosef HaTzadik. If not, there would have been hitbolelut, which means there would have been assimilation. They would have been gone. So he's single-handed. Says the Zera Shimshon after such a hesped, such an introduction. Milanu godom mi Yosef HaTzadik. Shaloi nisasik b'ela Moshe. The one who took care of him was one and only Moshe Rabbeinu. U'Moshe shelokach atzmos Yosef. He had it in his tent. The Gemara learns out from the fact that Yosef, he had Yosef's Aron in his tent. Yeah, in his tent. So the Gemara says that a person who has Thomas Mace can go Gomrinan Shatomet Thomas Mace Vametz Atzmai Mutar B'Machna Leviyah. There are different tiers of Kedusha in the Beis HaMikdash that parallel the way they were encamped in the desert. Machne Shechina, which was inside the Azorah. Machne Leviyah, by where Moshe Rabbeinu was. Machane Yisrael, a Metzora, who has Tumas Tzaras, Hutz L'Kol HaMachnos. Speaking bad about Jewish people, get out. Get out. Your tumah of there, chutz l'kol hamachnos. Carry, can't go inside. But tumas meis, up to machnavi. How do you know? Moshe Rabbeinu had Yosef. I faked the Zera Shimshon. I thought tzaddikim are not metama. What happened to that? That's his kasha now. You're telling me that tzaddikim are not metama, so how am I learning fake the Zera Shimshon? If so, Ella, we say, v'ameis atzum etom b'machnaviyah. The Amers, let's see it inside. Shat tzadikim einem metamim. That tzadikim are not metamim. How could this become the limud? Halo Yosef tzadik lo hayu metama. V'alkorach tzarich loymar. You have to say shegam tzadikim metama. So they are metama. So what's going on? So what does the shach mean when it says tzadikim are not metama? V'oid shaf medivir Reb Chaim koyin atzmai muchachachi. Because he said, if I would have been there, hayisi mitameloi. He says the lashon mitama. He himself says the lashon of tuma. So the ka'amar hayisi mutali tama b'shma min adiyesh tuma. V'oy dashasa amar batla kedusha. Hayloi lamer batla kedusha should have said batla tuma. It doesn't say that. It says batla kedusha. So what's going on? So on the one hand, you're saying that kivet tzadikim are not metama, and yet I'm saying that Yosef HaTzadik was such a big tzaddik, was yam metama. The time of Rabbi came, he said something which made a lot of sense. I want to resolve this, as says the Zera Shimshon, and teach you the following yesod. I would like to explain it as follows. Zokter Azoy. Sha'afa pi, shelefi ha'emes. At the moment of death, when their neshama is leaving them, al yedei neshikas HaKadosh Baruch Hu, einam mitamim. That ptira, Chazal say, a person who spent his or her whole life getting close to the Eibishter. You know, derech agav, bisograyim, just parenthetically, for a yid, it's very basic and elementary that every day is another opportunity to do what? Don't say make money. To get to grow. To grow. To come closer to the Eibishter. Every day is an opportunity of growth. How am I becoming a better person today? What did I do? What did I accomplish? It's all about the personal and spiritual growth of a person. Yom, yom. Are we always successful? Not always. Maybe some days worse than others. But it's in our conscious and subconscious. It's normal and it's expected that a yid waking up in the morning, how am I going to make today a positive day and make today a ruchnistic day? It's ingrained in us. That's the way a yid is. It's not about me. He is selfish a little bit. Selfish meaning, let me make the Eibishter proud. Let me make the day into a better day. That's the attitude that a Jew's supposed to have. When a person is living his life in such a mahalach day after day after day, and a tzaddik yisoid olam, when it comes time to leave this world, his life is the fulfillment of a culmination of all of his eschabers to Hashem. Steht in Svar Makdoshim, the neshama gets a vision of his schar. You know what it does? I'm out of here. The neshama says, Hineni, du binach. I'm ready to take it. When he sees, when he or she, the neshama sees their makaim, they're ready to go. There's nothing holding them back. For them, death is not scary. For them, death is pleasurable. Because the Maisa Misa of the period of the neshama, the Gemara talks about, I believe it's 103 different types of death. The Gemara says, the easiest is like a little hair coming out of milk. So lo koev and shum kev, it doesn't hurt. On the contrary, it's so easy. According to the Zera Shimshon, it's even something that a person could look forward to. Favos, because it's exactly what he's been living his whole life for. What? To be mischaper yourself with the Eibush, to say, here it happens. That's called Neshika. Zog the Zera Shimshon, and it's not mitame. A Neshikas from the Eibishter, Misas Neshika, Zog the Sivsei Koyin, Zog the Zera Shimshon, Einoi mitame. Oh!
That's what we're saying.
This is a good mayor. Im kol zeh lo rotza kosev lechalek beinayim. The Torah Akdosha, you asked me a question. How do we supposed to know which tzaddik is that madrega? We taka don't know. Meveisenisht. Bishul shel lechalek bein tzaddik letzaddik Ramin and Hosam. You know the Gemara says about Rabbi HaKadosh over here on Daf Kuf Gimel. The Rabbi called Bais Shimsha Osel Beisa. Rabbi, before he was nifter, he called his family, called his sons, Shimon. He called, I think Yehuda also, he called his children. And he said, every Erev Shabbos, prepare my bed, prepare a candle. He used to come home to his wife. After he was nifter, he made Kiddush. At Gemach Kiddush. And he came home. Kol Erev Shabbos and Motzei Shabbos he left. Until, says the Gemara, one day the maid was told a neighbor, quiet, Rebbe's sleeping, don't wake him up. And then she said, what? Rebbe's alive? He came back? So then Rebbe never came back again. Why? On other tzaddikim that were in Zeich to such a madrega. The Ari HaKadosh writes that Rebbe, the Rebbe of Torah Shabal Peh, talking about Neshama, Mishnah Neshama, the author of Mishnah, was Zeicha to have a Neshama which was a Gilgal of Yaakov Avinu. And like Yaakov Avinu loy meis, hu adin Rebbe HaKadosh was able to come back Yedin Shabbos Kodesh. Every Erev Shabbos he came back. Until, says the Zera Shimshon, Ad v'sulay also kedei lahoitzi laz al tzadikim arishonim. Not to say that other ones, he had a special zechus because he codified Mishnah. And he was brought down that koyach of neshama through the Mishnah. That is neshama during the time of Vayi Nafash. Every Shabbos, his neshama Yisera brought him back down to this world. Ma'ato, says the Zera Shimshon, Novay Levayer HaKosev. I want to explain what's going on. Zois HaTorah. I started off with a question. Zois HaTorah Adam Kiyamas Ba. What does the Torah Akdosha want with Zois HaTorah? Explains the Zera Shimshon as follows. Al derech shedarshu Zois Torah Ha'oila. It uses a similar lashon. Zois Torah Ha'oila Torah Achas Ha'oila Oilam Afilu Psulam Shem Alu Lo Yardu. The halacha is that when an oila becomes tummy, you're not supposed to take it up. When an oila spills the blood out, once it goes up, it doesn't come down. It should have gone down. Meaning to say, even though with the misa of a tzaddik, b'neshika, and the Yetzer Hara and the Satan and the Malach HaMaves has no shlita over him, me'ikra dedina, what should be? No tumah. The act of death was an act of aliyas haneshama, no tumah. Aber Zois HaTorah, in order not to be mechalik between this tzaddik and that tzaddik, Lamaisa, the caver and the people remain tameh. Not because necessarily he should be tameh. Aber but atayra achas l'chol hamesim sheyitamu. Af al pi sheyesh bem tzadikim shasvar nesene shelo yitamu. Even though v'chein hu lefi ha'emes hoyel sheyotza nishmasim b'neshika ein tuma. Now really says the Zera Shimshon says no tuma. Afiloch anogeya bahem yitma. You can't go ahead and make a discrepancy between the two. That's the madrega. And I want to add one more knech from the Zera Shimshon himself. If you go back here in Parshas Chukas to page Reish Zayin, what's the yesod that we're learning tonight? What's the yesod? The yesod is that engraving the neshama into the guf gives the person a guf noki v'tar that has a koyach that it itself, the Eibush, like we said, is willing to put his lips on such a guf. Neshika, the guf is as a tar as I can open a neshika from the Eibushter. Says the Zera Shimshon over here on page Reish Zayin regarding the mitzvah of tzitzis. The Gemara says, "Uriisem oisoi uzachartem es kol mitzvahs." You remember all the mitzvahs. The Rashi makes the cheshbon. Tzitzis, right, has the strings. It's gematria 600 with the 5 and the 8 is 613. Uzachartem es kol mitzvahs. Says the Zera Shimshon the following regarding the mitzvahs tzitzis. Uma'ato mitzvahs tzitzis. He said, we'll start a little before that. On page Reish Zayin, second column. He's talking about the Chet of Adma Rishon. 3 lines from the top. When after the sin, what was Adma Rishon's sin, Rabbi say? What was his sin? What's that? What was his kilkul? He made a monster. You know what that means? His guf does what his guf wants. Loch patli masha neshama omer. The neshama said, I shouldn't eat from the tree. I don't want to eat from the tree. I'm a chelik elakayim emal. I don't want to eat from the tree. Your neshama didn't want to. Adam Rishon was to get on. The problem is he created a monster. He created a guf that will do things that the neshama doesn't fight it. That's misa. The period between the neshama and the guf. He killed himself by creating a guf that doesn't do what the neshama wants. It says the Zera Shimshon, the nifred, 4 lines down from the top, haguf mahanefesh, shaguf holach achar tavish al oilam hazeh, v'lechein hapirud hazeh goyrem shu osir leguf hanos haklayim. He's referring to over here Klayim. Skip over to the next paragraph. Uma'ato mitzvahs tzitzis. Shehuter ba Klayim. He mitzvah gedoyle v'shaper kamashi shkula keneged kol mitzvahs. You know what tzitzis does, and I'll explain in a minute. Shahare miyachedes umikasheres haguf im hanefesh. Ba'avodas Hashem kemoi shehoyo mitchila koidom hachet. How? How is it do it? I know sometimes in the summer people get a little bit lax, cholila. It's hot and this, it's tzitzis. And do you know what tzitzis does? Your guf, everyone's guf, mitzad atzmoi, just exists. What's your guf doing? It's sitting here, right? Not if you're wearing tzitzis. You make your guf from being passive into active. From passivi into activi. You're taking your guf, and your guf is now wearing tzitzis. It's being poyel. That was Hebrew. It's being poyel. It's being poyel. And being bekum va'aseh, your guf went from an inanimate object, from just being a klutz, to being wearing tzitzis. That's keneged kol ha-mitzvahs. Because what's the yesod of the mitzvahs? How many mitzvahs do you have? 613. Keneged what? 248, 365. Positive, negative. The guf and the gidim. The whole tzuras ha'adam. The tzitzis is the one thing that takes your guf, which is b'matzav, in its normal matzav, doing nothing. No, it's not doing nothing. It's doing an act of kiyum ha-mitzvah wherever I go. So it's being proactive every moment. So it's being like a nefesh. It says the Zera Shimshon, Sha'arei miyachedes u'mekasheres ha'guf im ha-nefesh. You're being mekasher together ba'avodas Hashem kemoi shehoisa koidem ha'chet. ולכן כסיבו ראיסם אויסוי וזכרתם es כל מצוות השם שבריאס הציצס יש לנו לזכור תמיד שלא ילך אחר טייבס הגוף. It stops and reminds a person, gives us a koyach not to go after the body. ובזכרנו זויס ועדה שתויסבנו קדושה סיינו יויסם משאר מצוות. Shein remez was that it's the one and only mitzvah that can be mekasher the ganze guf zusammen. And I once heard from Moshe Feinstein, Scheiner Levracha. It's a mitzvah kiyumis. You know what that means? You know what it means, mitzvah kiyumis?
Mitzvah is like a new word.
No. If you don't want to wear dalit kanfos, you don't have to. Such a big mitzvah, but instead of Eibishter putting a gun to your head and saying you have to do it, you get the choice to say, I want to do it. You have the choice to wear a beged that's mechuyev b'tzitzis, so I could bring it upon myself, so I could take the initiative. Bris Milah gets done for you, that's it, so you're gemalet. But this is a pu'ula. It's very different than a bris milah. What? Tefillin, yes.
You wash because you're eating.
You're washing. That's not.
Everything you're doing is.
It's true that when you put on tefillin, now your guf, your hand, and your head, but the tzitzis, it goes on your body. It has a din that like you wrap yourself like satei batzitzis. One last line. Lekabel pnei hashchina. So when a person, says the Zera Shimshon, puts on his tzitzis, so then he's being miskasher his guf. That's the schus that a person has of being royo risim oisoy. Ki'ilu, the ganze body becomes mikusher to a ma'isa, becomes a pu'ulav mitzvah. When your guf, you get buried in a talis too, your guf becomes mikusher to your neshama. If so then when a person's nifter, his guf is kadosh v'tar. There's a schus that if a person has, like the Zera Shimshon says, b'shem the sifsei koyin, person has that koyach to fight against his yetzer hara, his act misa, it shouldn't be scary. Mitzvah would be something in a sense that he would look forward to. Because that's what happens when he's nifter. The Malchama says no kesher over him. There's no shaykhis then. There's nothing to be worried about. Fakert, and it becomes so pleasurable. He sees his schar. They say before tzaddikim were nifter, sometimes the people would come to greet them. They would see a vision of their Rabbi. They would see their Rabbi would come to get them. So it means that they were going to a place so they shouldn't be scary. They're going to a place where they were being mislave through grace of tzaddikim from their generation, from their times. So ma'ala zoicha zayin, zois ha-Torah. The Torah Kadosh is teaching us that a person could be zoicha, Adam ki yamus ba'oil, which in itself is not an act of misa. It's the greste chibur to the Eibishter. When we live our lives on a daily basis, being mis'ale, bigger and bigger, more and more, looking for every day as an opportunity of an aliyah and fighting our yetzer hara, being misgaber over our yetzer hara, then einach hanami. Even when we pass away, we're moving up. We're going to a higher madreg and a higher makom. Chananya ben Akasha Rotza Kodesh Baruch Hu Lezakas Es Yisrael Leficha Chebolam Torah Mitzvah Shenemar Adonai Chafetz Laman Tzidkoi Yagdil Torah V'Yad Yerina Sabbath.